Thank you very much. This is the Planning Committee of Thursday, the 9th of September 2021. And the first item on the agenda are to ask for you to authorise me to sign the minutes of the meeting of the 12th of August. Could I?
So moved.
Thank you very much. Good. Julie, could we have apologies for absences and substitutes, please?
We've had apologies from Councillor Curtis, Councillor Harmer and Councillor Johnson. Councillor Barnes is standing in as substitute for Councillor Johnson, and Councillor Tempe is standing in for substitute for Councillor Harmer.
Thank you. We did. Any additional items for the agenda? I don't believe so.
No.
Thank you. Any withdrawn applications?
No.
No, thank you very much. Disclosures of interest, I think we have some disclosures of interest. Yes, Councillor Meir. All right, thank you very much. Any others? Well, if they arise as the applications come up, just raise your hand at that time. There's a planning applications listed, item 6, which details what we're talking about today. And so we're going to move on to the first application, which is RR 2021-1759/P. I will just say before we go into this, to remind everyone that this is a Rother District application, and as members of this committee, we are the statutory authority. We're not acting in the role of members of the council, but members of the planning authority. That's a distinct difference, and I think we all know what that means. So we do have some speakers for this today, and I will talk to them when we come to that point. The first point is for our officer, Sarah Shepherd, to present the application. I'll hand over to you.
Good morning, councillors. That will come up. There we go. Right. And the first item is the item for the replacement BMX jump park and a new BMX rider track with some floodlighting, and also a skate park with floodlighting as well. Sorry, very sensitive. That's the aerial photograph for you. Right, members visited the site on Tuesday. The proposals relate to the new improved facilities at the site. There's an existing BMX track, which is here. Oh, sorry, this is very sensitive, not used to this. There's existing BMX track, which you can see with the dirt track up in the northwestern corner adjacent to the woodland. The proposed skate park would be where you can see the little Christmas tree symbol at the southwestern end of the bowling green that's in the area there. The football pitch stays to the northern end, and then the skate park wraps around. The BMX racing track will wrap round lower down from the jumping track. I have one update that's been circulated to you. We've received 10 additional objections, mostly reiterating the points that are already set out in the report, with a couple of extra issues mentioned there. The area of works is towards the western side of the recreation ground, furthest away from the dwellings and set against the backdrop of trees. This section of the site is at a lower level than Canada Way, and also in part screened by the hedges that surround the bowling green. That's a view looking along the edge of Canada Way, where it wraps around the northern edge with the trees there. You look down across the football pitch, and the BMX track is at the end of that pitch, along the tree line there. That's viewing from the public footpath at the bowling green, the children's play area to the left. And that's a footpath that goes down to access the bowling green, and that footpath would be continued down to serve the new skate tracks. The There are three principal elements for this, as we've already mentioned. The new skateboard park, which is to replace the old one at the Downs, the new BMX jump track, and the upgrading of the BMX racing track as well. The skate park is located to the side of the bowling green and is to have an acoustic 2-metre fence to mitigate noise, as set out by the environmental health comments that you've seen in the report. Lighting to the skate park and the BMX racetrack is proposed and has been assessed in accordance with the Institute of Lighting engineers' guidance. By virtue of the design, light is directed downwards, and hence there is very limited light spill outside of the tracks. Take you through some more photographs. That's looking at where the skateboard park will be, where the current zip wire is at the end of the bowling green. That's a view southwards to the back of the properties at Buxton Drive. That's a view back up towards what will be the skate park and the BMX track going up on the left and the existing one above that. That's a view back along the southern side of the bowling green, back towards Canigaba Way with the children's play area there. This is the existing BMX track. That's the site plan for you to reorientate where everything's going. The plans there of the proposed new tracks, as I say, that southern and western side of the site. The tree line you can see indicated on the plans there along the bottom of the site. That's the skate park proposals, and as you can see, it's all set within the ground levels, which is sloping at that point. That's an indication of the lighting plan for the skate park, which is very limited spill. Outside of that blue line, it drops down to very low numbers, and then 0 going further out from that. Is the reworking of the existing BMX track there. And that is also, as we said, got some lighting there. It's not come up very well on that plan, but basically outside there is some light spill within the blue, red and green areas, filtering down to 0, which is the very edge of the woodland if you're looking at the southern side of that. And the majority of the red area around the site is 0 light spill for that area. By virtue of the design, light is directed downwards, as I said, and hence very limited light spill outside the tracks. Environmental Health have confirmed that while light will be viewed, it will not intrude into local dwellings, so i.e. people in the surrounding area will be able to see the light and won't actually be into their dwellings. With regard to parking, it's not envisaged to change significantly except on event days when stewards have been arranged, and parking will also be arranged with elements of parking in a designated parking area on the grassland. The football pitch is to stay, as I said. The proposal is not considered harmful to wildlife or biodiversity, subject to obtaining appropriate licences from Natural England and sensitive lighting strategy, which are also conditions for those as well. The potential for contaminated land at the site has been noted. Environmental Health confirm acceptance of the submitted reports, subject to conditions to cover any arising issues during development. In line with national policy, where any part of a playing field is proposed for redevelopment, Sport England have been consulted. In this instance, that development is to secure the provision of additional and enhanced outdoor sport and recreation provision. That provision is considered to be beneficial and to outweigh the loss of the undeveloped grass areas there. It is noted that the football pitch, bowl green and the children's play area remain unaffected. It will be noted that paragraphs 6.4.3 and 6.4.4 of Sport England's comments that they originally recommended a condition, which is condition 14 in the report. While discussions on that condition was recommended while they were still having discussions with our amenities section, While discussions were ongoing, in particularly reference to some fencing and lighting issues, those discussions have now been clarified, and that was at a meeting only yesterday. The Sport England have now sent an email to us, which I have here, received late yesterday, to confirm that the condition is no longer required. The matters that were being discussed have been agreed now, and there's no longer a requirement for condition 14. Members have a full report in front of you. The recommendation is for approval subject to conditions, excluding condition 14. Thank you. Just so you know, that's an image of the lighting there. They are quite high columns, but then that enables the lighting to be flat, which allows the light to go downwards rather than outwards.
Thank you. Thanks for that. We have a number of people wishing to speak on this application, both against, for, and ward members, and to other members as well. So just for the benefit of those speaking for and against, in fact, I think we have Rebecca Owen, who's the ROTHA agent for this, and she may or may not choose to speak depending on whether members might wish to ask her questions. So we have the first person, who is Gillian Moon. I think if you would come forward to the speaker area. Now you have 5 minutes to speak, and you'll have our full attention at that time, and members may choose to ask you questions afterwards or not. 5 minutes is quite a long time when you're speaking. All right, and if you can try and keep to the time, that would be good. So thank you very much.
I'm here to represent my neighbours in Deans Drive, Windmill Drive, Grange Court Drive, Canada Way and Buxton Drive. We object to this development for the following reasons: loss of a precious space, green space used by all age groups, and providing a safe space for all kinds of sporting and leisure activities, such as football, cricket, keep fit, dog walking, picnics, etc. It is essential for residents' mental health and was a lifesaver during lockdown. It should not be destroyed and limited to the use of a small minority of Bexley's population. No road infrastructure for such a large development, and increased parking needs resulting in illegal parking on grass verges and the footpaths. Damage to football field if up to 200 cars are allowed to park on a regular basis, thus rendering the only bit of usable grass as an unusable mud bath. Constant noise from skateboards clicking and banging from morning to night, with no relief to neighbours who will not be able to open windows or sit in their gardens. Trees lose leaves, so will not mask noise. They currently don't when a football match is played. Lighting until 9:15 p.m. affecting young families. Increased antisocial behaviour and drug abuse when lights go off due to remote area for skate park well away from prying eyes. This currently safe recreation ground will become unsafe for young children and dogs running on the grass near activities and getting injured by bikes crossing from BMX track to skate park, or by running on the activities as they will have no barriers. Use of BMX track and skate park by motorbikes, and increased use of footpaths from Canada Way to Deans Drive, which is still outstanding. Possible release of dangerous substances in nearby areas, including asbestos dust, due to the construction of the skate park, due to the area having been a refuse tip in the past. Prevention of access to air ambulance landing on lower field if serious injury occurs. Totally undemocratic and underhanded dealings with neighbours in St Stephen's Ward, some of whom have no access to technology and who received no written notification of this proposal. Using COVID as an excuse to push development through without a proper face-to-face consultation with residents for something that will have such a huge negative impact on the enjoyment of their homes and devalue their properties. I personally would not move the proposal. Wrong information given regards to submitting evidence to the council. Letters of objection deliberately kept off the planning site, despite my knowledge that these objections had been emailed, posted or handed into reception. We are all aware that most of you are inclined to accept this proposal, but we ask that you think carefully about what you intend to destroy, and those residents left behind to pick up the pieces when things start to go wrong. You don't have to live with it on your doorstep. On paper, you can make promises, but these do not work in practice. We need a management committee, including residents, so that we have some redress when things go wrong. I have acknowledged that you have been advised that this scheme should not go ahead without proper monitored CCTV, as it will be unacceptable to neighbours. We need confirmation that this will be done. We ask that you reconsider placing this development on a site which can be more easily monitored on already concreted land with car parking well away from a tight residential area. Even if other spaces are earmarked for housing, it does not make it acceptable to grab the last bit of green space and take away this area for the whole community. We're all being encouraged to grow trees and keep grass to help the environment, and you are going totally against this policy by dumping concrete on Sidley's remaining green space. And I haven't actually written this, but the zip wire is used constantly by young children. Yesterday were people picnicking on the grass. There won't be any green space left for any of us to use. It will be just skateboarding from morning to night. The current BMX track, we're all fine with that. They don't cause problems. They come with their families and they go. Except for my 5 minutes.
Well, you have another minute.
Yeah. Just the trouble is, most of the people in the Deans Drive area are older people. A lot of them haven't felt they can write. Some are in their 90s, and it's actually damaging their mental health, worrying about this scheme, wondering what's going to be happening. I go over to the field every day with my dog. I see what happens over there, and it is going to be horrendous. So I would ask that you take this into consideration. It's a really tightly knit area, and our area hasn't even been considered. Nobody told us. We were told we were forgotten. They forgot to tell us. We need a public consultation. So I would ask, if you could, that you defer this until that's happened. And that's.
Are there any questions for Mr. Moon? Yes, Councillor Tempe.
Yeah, thank you very much. Could I just ask, did you go to the consultation that was recently held?
We were told the day before, yes, but it was too late by then. We weren't told at the beginning. Some of us got an online survey a few months ago, which we all commented on and objected. But a lot of the people haven't got technology in our area. They don't have smartphones, they don't have computers. And we were told that people should have been notified in writing. It shouldn't just be left to computers. I know there's been Face of Sidley and so on, which we don't go on. Our area has been forgotten. It's almost as if we don't exist. They're all I was brought up in a poor area in South London. I had no garden until I was 13. I know how essential green space is for people, and everybody uses that grass, not just BMXers and skateboarders, and there won't be any grass left.
But could I just also ask, you mentioned that the football pitch would be ruined by cars parking.
Well, that's what the agenda said, that up to 200 cars were proposed to be parked on the football pitch.
I understood that there's already events that happen there where cars have been parked there before.
Not that many. Never that many. I mean, at the moment, the car parking is a huge issue. I mean, last week there was a BMX, small BMX thing, and there was football, and people were parking in our road. They were parking on the footpath going from Canada Way to Deans Drive. People had to ask them to move because they're not supposed to park there. They were parking on the verges. They were double parking, and that's just one small event and one football match.
And the BMX currently, the noise level of that is acceptable.
Yeah, that's acceptable to us as it currently is. It's more the skateboard park that's causing us problems noise-wise. Obviously, if the BMX track facilities are attracting more people, there will be a car parking issue, but it's a skateboard park, the real issue.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any other questions? Yes, Councillor Errington.
Thank you very much for coming along today. I think it might be Sarah Shepherd that can advise on the zip wire. You said it was, we did actually see the zip wire and I was very impressed with it. Can Sarah perhaps confirm that that's going to be relocated within the site? Yeah, thank you.
We can ask Rebecca. Thank you. Yeah. Any other questions? Thank you very much. You made a lot of points there for us to consider.
Thank
so
you.
I really appreciate that.
So quickly.
No, you did very well. Thank you very much. Thank you. So we do have Rebecca Owen to speak if she wishes to speak. Did you wish to speak? Well, there may be some members who want to ask questions of you. Would you like to come forward and just take a few questions? So, does anyone have a question for Rebecca Owens? Yes, you do. Errington.
Good morning, Rebecca. I'm sorry, I've got a bit of a list, but hopefully it's quick fire. Is there a PA system at the moment in terms of events, or do people bring along their own PA?
Um,
I didn't mention cricket.
yeah,
Okay. Our community wardens, Phil and Marcia, do they patrol the area at the moment?
I'm not aware that they do.
Right, okay, but there's potential actually for, I know it would be a budgetary thing, but potential for our community wardens to include that area.
That's a different service area
Yeah.
from my own, so that would need discussion.
Okay, that's great, thank you. And in terms of the dates, so that neighbours, if this were to go ahead, in terms of the dates, is this something that we could advertise via My Alerts or something like that, so people knew when the large events were going to be on?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, thanks very much.
Yes, Councillor Mear.
Thank you. Just for clarification, the acoustic fence, I think, protects the bowls green from noise, does it not?
No, that's just happens to be where it's going to be located. The purpose is to protect residents to the north of the site and towards the northern end of Buxton Drive.
But it does nothing for those
No, it doesn't. But the acoustic modelling demonstrated that that's where it was most needed in order to meet the noise levels that were required.
thank you. One other question is the lights on the BMX track. Do they come on every night as it gets dark, or do users have to switch them on or put a coin in the slot?
So there will be set hours within which they would operate, but if the facilities weren't in use, they wouldn't come on. So they would be sensitive to people using facilities. So you wouldn't have a situation, for example, on a winter's night when it was pouring with rain, where the lights would be on.
Yes, my security light at home comes on whenever a fox walks past, but
yes, we have had that discussion with the lighting engineers, but I'm told that won't happen.
thank you very much.
Councillor Ganley.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, can you tell me what is the area of land to be covered by the skateboard park? And preferably as a percentage of the whole park.
Okay,
Or if you could give me the area, roughly the area of the park and the area to be covered.
The dimensions of a skate park at its maximum widths are about 28 metres by 30. I don't know what that is as a percentage of the site.
Right.
I'm afraid.
I wonder if anybody else does. Anyway, thank you.
Councillor Barnes.
Thank you, Chairman. I wanted to ask, and maybe this will have to be answered by another officer, but can you tell me a little about Sidley Wood and Sidley Stream? Who owns those?
Rother owns those.
So they are under our direct control. Yeah. Has any consideration, I see there's a post and rail fence between the BMX track and that wood. Has any consideration been given to putting a hedge there, which would actually improve the acoustics and actually help biodiversity?
No, that isn't something that has been considered. Our advice from the acoustic consultants has always been that vegetation doesn't really make a significant difference to the noise that residents may or may not hear. It's a possibility that we could do some planting along that fence line, but it's not something we had considered because obviously it is an existing woodland.
You said, and I think I'd like to just clarify the point, you said the residents to the north are most affected by the acoustic pattern. Did you measure the effect, the dampening effect of the wood for the residents who live to the southwest?
I don't believe that has been factored into the acoustic modelling because the trees actually have so little value in reducing the noise.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I thought it's amazing space that in the heart of Sibley there, wonderful, wonderful open space, and the wood particularly needs some attention, definitely. But I know that's outside what we're talking about today, because Councillor Gray has been surveying it recently. I thought it was very, very sad, the closed, bricked up pavilion. I mean, it was just a terrible, I don't know, lack of care in that area. And there was mention of toilets and no toilet facilities. Would you comment on the fact there are no toilet facilities?
Would you prefer to do this in the next application, or you,
Well,
you sort of overlaps a bit?
Okay.
Yeah. Good. Well, why don't you comment on what toilet facilities will support this application?
Okay, so there are no public toilets at the moment, just the toilets in the existing pavilion, which are used by the football teams when they play there, and occasionally for other events held on the site. So the next application does include a proposal for disabled access unisex public toilet. And as for the building as a whole, it is something that we are in discussion with other partners about the possibility of how we can enhance that and increase its use for other purposes, but that's at an early stage.
Made a very compelling case, and I just wondered if there was anything that you could actually say to her that would reassure her. There seems to be quite a lot of people who didn't know this was happening and are clearly quite concerned. And as we all know from our experience on planning, very often something that you're very fearful of in the event turns out to be not quite as serious as you thought. But clearly there is a lot of concern about noise, about light. And now we're talking about PAs. I wonder if there's anything that you could say that would in some way mollify her and so that she could be able to tell those who are most concerned that it's not as bad as they think it's going to be. Because I would like to hear that as well.
Well, these are issues that we have given careful consideration to throughout the project. The lighting, as Sarah has already explained, is going to produce very little spill. That won't affect residents. And as I've also mentioned, it's not a case that the lighting will be on are unused. As for noise, this is why we've proposed, why the acoustic barrier has been proposed, so that residents don't experience unacceptable changes in the existing ambient noise levels. CCTV is going to be installed, so that will assist with ensuring that antisocial behaviour doesn't become more of an issue. And also, of course, the increased use of the site for legitimate purposes by families, by children and young people and adults even, will help to police the site. And so, in fact, it should be a better outcome than it is currently in that respect.
There was a lot of concern about very unpleasant things that could be happening there. And I just wondered if that happens now to any kind of limited extent, whether all the people who will be using it will be able to make absolutely sure that that is no longer going to be the case.
I don't think existing users can be responsible for ensuring that no antisocial behaviour occurs. But obviously that increased natural surveillance and policing of the site by legitimate users will help to deter that.
Councillor Langlands.
Just two quick questions, Rebecca. One, is there an age limit on the use of this site? Because this is a difficult one, isn't it? You know,
no, you're all very welcome to use
Can I use it? There isn't. That's excellent. That's good. The other thing, which is probably a little bit off the wall, but was there ever a survey done of the children in the area, in Sidley and the surrounding, to see if they would use it or would like to have this facility?
Yeah, in the earlier stages of the project, we did a lot of that kind of work with All Saints School in particular, some of the other local primary schools, Bexhill College, and me. So yes.
Lovely, thank you.
No more questions for Rebecca Owens? I'm afraid you can't, I'm sorry. I know it's a horrible thing, isn't it? You have to stick to the process. It is frustrating. Councillor Errington.
Very quickly, the reference that the resident made morning till night, and I've been trying to think about this, and it kind of ties in what Councillor Langlands has said. Today, if you went up there, hopefully you wouldn't see too many children. You would see the under 5s and the over 18s, because the rest of them should be at school. And if you saw them up there, you should be on the phone to the school to say, kids are down here. So we're looking at weekends, evenings and school holidays. But if we went up there now, it wouldn't be busy, hopefully. Yeah,
there would still be people using it, I would imagine.
But not it. It's going to be the weekends and the
it
holidays.
Wouldn't be the peak period of use. No.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Tempe.
Just quickly, the previous speaker said that lots of the residents weren't online. Did we do anything in the media, newspapers, etc.?
Yeah,
this has been going on quite a while.
It's been going on for over 3 years, actually. Yeah, so we've used various forms of communication.
So not only just online. So there have been other vehicles. Okay, thank you very much.
There are no more questions. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, there's going to be plenty of opportunities to discuss all of these issues as we move forward. So I know there are quite some very interesting and pertinent issues to resolve. We have 4 members who wish to speak, 2 ward members, and also Councillor Thomas, who is in the adjoining ward, and Councillor Bayliss, who's the lead member for Regeneration, wished to speak. So I think I'm going to have the ward members, and I'm not sure if Councillor Carroll wanted to speak at this time or not. Did you want to speak now or later? You can speak at the end as well. All right, that's fine. That's already good. Councillor Coleman, did you want to speak?
I can certainly kick it off, Chair. Let me know when I'm here to do so.
You can, but you're 5 minutes are up.
Great. Thank you, Chair. Modern skate parks are a staple of sporting provision in towns across the country. Hastings, Eastbourne, Battle, and many other towns have quality skate parks. Bexhill does not. For someone young or old looking to take up the sport in Bexhill, they currently have a choice between the curbside or run-down ramps made of warped metal and rusty nails knocked together 30 years ago as a temporary solution. The myth that skateboarding is a catalyst for thugs and drugs has been shown false by the excellence of Sam Beckett, Sky Brown, Jesse Thomas, and many others. Think of the future professional athletes and Olympians that this site could create. Now, I've spent a lot of time with Robin, Luke, Kyle, and the rest of the young people who helped design the skate park facility to be inclusive, long-lasting, and part of a local sporting legacy. I have absolute faith in their commitment to look after this site, to provide support for newcomers, and to discourage the few bad apples. And then we get into the proposed BMX facilities, an incredibly exciting proposal that will upgrade the current track into something that will put Sidley on the map. And like with the skaters, the Jump Club and BMXers will be incredible custodians of this site. They've already shown what an asset they are to the area through their classes and events. This will elevate that and provide life-changing opportunities for future sports excellence. Whether starting out or going pro, the mix of small and big jumps alongside the Jump Club's professional coaching will give young people an opportunity to learn and grow in an exciting sport. I know that the BMXers are also keen to help look after the skate park, as many will be able to use both of the facilities. Now, this is a proposal that Sidley's town councillors, district councillors, county councillor, and even the MP is behind. But more importantly, this is a proposal that many, I would suggest most in Sidley, are behind, as evidenced by the high volume of supportive comments in the report. As for those residents who have concerns, this isn't a case of forging ahead at any cost. The potential issues, particularly for those living closest to the site, have been carefully considered, and the proposed conditions in the report, I feel, fully address those concerns. On parking, the rec can be opened up for big events, as it is for other events, so cars can park on the green and not by neighbouring properties. Outside of events, many of those using the facilities are unlikely to be using cars at all, given that bikes, scooters and skateboards are in themselves pretty efficient modes of transport, and a lot of the users will be local. On noise, the surveys and additional buffers, as mentioned in the report, address this. This isn't a rural country meadow in the sort of backwaters of Burwash. It's a vibrant local recreation ground that thrives on the sound of families, laughter and people getting active. On the loss of green space, this is an area sandwiched between a bowls green and a dirt track. The main chunk of green space on Sidley Rec that is used for picnics, football, dog walking, etc. is not affected, and there will be plenty of room to walk in and around the proposed facilities with dogs, buggies or picnic baskets if you choose, if necessary. Not to mention the addition of improved paving, which better aids accessibility to the grounds. On community use, this will be an incredible addition to the recreation ground that is regularly used by groups like Heart of Sidley for activity sessions and events. The sort of family-orientated opportunities that locals regularly ask for more of, especially during holidays. This proposal provides a great opportunity for sporting activities to take place alongside these events. This is not a closed-off park for the elite. It is a community facility that can and will be used by all. Not only that, but this site will provide the perfect starting point for future improvements. Now, the Sports England funding for this project is getting close to expiring and is unlikely to be offered again. So this is a very time-limited opportunity. And so, on behalf of the many residents, and many residents, that have told me how excited they are to see this Olympic addition to Sidley Recreation Ground, I ask you to approve the officer's recommendation, bring Bexhill's modern sporting legacy up to par with the neighbouring towns, and provide Sidley Village with quality sporting facilities so that people of all ages can get healthy, learn new skills, and look super cool whilst doing it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Coleman. I suspect you might owe an apology to the members for Burwash. I'm not sure they would appreciate being referred to as a backwater. But that's making light of something which is very serious. So thank you for that. Councillor Thomas, I think you're in the adjoining ward and you're asked to speak on this. Would you like to say something?
Thank you, Chair. I have an interest in this as a ward member because St Stephen's begins where Sidley ends. And in fact, reference was made to the acoustics of the area, and it was acknowledged that in fact there hasn't been any testing of the acoustics in the southwest. And I went there on Saturday, and I can confirm that the sounds from Sidley Rec, because of the topography of the area, do definitely carry into St Stephen's ward, and very, very clearly as well. As you have heard, there are residents who were attracted to the area by its unmistakable tranquility. They feel they've had to endure some degree of noise, vandalism and intrusive parking already, but fear it worsening. They also expect an increase in drug taking, a loss of green space now enjoyed freely by joggers, strollers and dog walkers, but they also point out the popularity of the peace and quiet which the area normally provides. Now, the noise would not necessarily worry me because I'm used to urban noises. But if you were used to enjoying your garden peacefully, it would be a different matter. Floodlights' ability to deter vandalism doesn't impress the opponents because they don't want its visual intrusion upon the space. That said, I conducted an ad hoc survey of residents and others outside the Winmore Drive Post Office, which is in the part of St Stephen's closest to Sidley. I did 34 separate interviews. Some did not know the proposals, but the overall opinion in my ward was hugely positive towards the development. Comments like all for it, anything to keep the kids happy, wonderful news, a fantastic idea predominated. So far as fears of antisocial behaviour were concerned, the majority opinion was the provision of this facility would have the effect of reducing antisocial behaviour because it would give kids something challenging and interesting to do. However, a person who said she was not against it but had concerns about how it would be managed and maintained did speak to a significant sector. And so I think it's very important that we do monitor the situation carefully and ensure the fears that have been expressed will not be realised. One person, about 75 years old, told me he would be tempted to take up skating himself, and I said to him that I look forward to seeing him competing in the next Olympics. Personally, I think it's a great idea. Congratulations to all involved, and I echo one of my residents who said, and get a move on and get it built quickly.
Thank you very much, Councillor Thomas. And I think we have Councillor Bayliss, who also wishes to speak.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I won't repeat what Councillor Coleman has said about the benefits to the wider community of a new skate park in Sydney and improved BMX facilities. But what I do want to say is something around the great bunch of young people that I've had the pleasure of working with since 2017, when we set up the Bexhill Skate Park Action Group. These young people are fabulous. We've got 516 members of our Bexhill Skate Park Action Group Facebook group, and the vast majority of that is made up of members with families, parents, older skateboarders, younger skateboarders, scooter riders, BMX riders, a whole variety of people, and it's run really well. It's a very positive forum. Through the Skate Park Action Group, we thought the skate park would be built and up and running by 2019 because of delays, mainly COVID related. Here we are 2 years later than planned at committee, hopefully seeing this application approved. All through this time, the group have become, could have become disillusioned, they could have lost heart. They have stuck with it. And in terms of it, they have worked really hard. They ran a community survey in 2017, which showed that Sidley Recreation Ground was by far the most popular location for a skate park. They promoted and ran a competition for logo design. They got involved with Bexhill Lions wheel and walk with our older residents and buggies on the promenade. They've met several mayors, and they worked hard with the council's construction company on the design. I couldn't have been prouder of the way they've behaved, and I want to allay residents' fears that building these new facilities will attract the wrong sort. The young people and the not so young people are a great community who just want up-to-date, safe facilities set in an area where a lot of young people live. Finally, I want to say that there is support for this project and these young people from across the political spectrum. Hugh Merriman was in contact with me yesterday to say he fully backs the project. He wrote, "I've put my full support behind this fantastic local project since first meeting the Bexhill Skate Park Action Group in 2000, member of the District Council, ably by Rebecca, and has been a community-wide effort. It will deliver a state-of-the-art skateboarding and BMX and sports facility in Sidley for the young and the young at heart of our town. Thanks to everyone who's been involved in the hard work it's taken to bring it to the planning stage. I look forward to seeing it open next year." Councillor Jimmy Carroll has been on board from the beginning, and that's no pun intended. Councillor Azad, and County Councillor for the area, is supportive. The newly elected town councillors, Tony Carroll and Julie Norris, have met with potential users and offered their support. In fact, I'd like to quote Julie Norris. She said about meeting with the action group saying, "Let's get this open." So please agree with Sam, Jimmy, Abel, Tony, Hugh and Julie. Support approval and let's get this open. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bayliss. And that's all from non-committee members. So thank you. So let's open the floor to committee members to talk about the planning issues involved here and things that have arisen that you might want either clarified or resolved. I'd like to
Does anybody know what the area of the?
Yeah, I was going to ask if you put that. You put that.
Just to give an idea.
If we could just put that slide up again, which shows the area. You may not be able to get an accurate calculation, but it would at least show. I think you're trying to establish what's left.
Yeah.
It doesn't show the two.
I mean,
It doesn't show.
the skate park's not that dissimilar in size to the bowling green.
Yeah, the skate park sits directly behind the bowling green, and the BMX track runs about the same width all the way down.
I mean, if you look at that one, you can see the skate is the white. It's the bowling green, taller than the bowling green area. It's actually a very small part of the overall site.
Overall site, yeah.
But as a group, it takes up. As a group, it takes up where it is now, and the area, the red line, doesn't it? That's the area of the red line.
The red line encompasses all three.
So the area of the red line, which doesn't have the existing BMX track, is the additional amount of area that will go from grass to one form of track or another.
Right.
So the area outside that to the right is, if you like, free space.
That includes the BMX track, doesn't it?
Includes the BMX track,
Yeah.
Anything
Which
with the red
exists
line.
already.
Yeah. So the red line is the developed area.
Is the whole lot. Yeah.
And anything outside that isn't. So that area that you see in the red line that isn't already got the BMX track on it is the new area.
Yeah.
The area. Everything else remains green. Does that help? I mean, you can't really get a percentage, but you can make a judgment for yourself on that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Barnes.
Yes, since I live outside Bexhill,
near Burwash,
it's always slightly dangerous, I think, to dip one's toe into somebody else's affairs. But this is quite clearly a well-used recreation facility, and this is a quite natural development. And I accept the argument that actually by the young, this is more likely to put them in train for something positive. So there's an awful lot going, as Councillor Coleman and various others have said, for actually getting this project underway. And I might have thought a little about deferment because the consultation has clearly not been quite as perfect as we would have wished. But given the constraints on the funding, I don't think deferment is really an option this morning. So my mind turns, I must say, to mitigation. And it is the noise levels rather than anything else, particularly probably from the skate park. I noticed the skate park has been put in the centre of the site, which is probably as far away as you can get from any of the houses involved. But I do wonder whether we can get certain assurances about the future of Sidley Wood. Very important sort of noise already, and whether there's anything we can do along the southwestern boundary of the BMX track. I would prefer a hedge because I think that absorbs sound and actually is ecologically much more friendly than an acoustic fence. But if we got the right sort of hedge there, I think it will probably considerably mitigate the noise problem and reinforce what is happening in the wood. And if we can give certain assurances about the future of the wood, I think that might do something to allay the concerns of the residents of St Stephen's Wood. So I'd want to explore, before I vote, the possibility of imposing some conditions along those lines, which might well mitigate what will undoubtedly be some adverse noise effects.
Okay, let's
the other problem, obviously, is around R's and lights. I've no doubt other people will address those. And it seems to me what's proposed there is reasonable.
All right, let's just, before I move on to you, Councillor Tempe, do you want to just address those, either what's in the conditions now or what could be placed in the conditions to ensure that the noise and actually the light too is managed to an acceptable level? I know that all the reports say they are, but to ensure that they are when it's constructed.
Yeah, environmental health were obviously a fundamental consultancy in this, and they've assessed both the lighting design strategy and the information for that and the noise models as well. Originally, the acoustic fence was to be 1.5 metres, but following the noise model and all the assessments that they did, they said, no, it needs to be 2 metres, and hence there is a condition for the 2 metre fence.
Only on one side.
On one side, but they didn't perceive that they needed to have one on the other side as well. Now, you know, there are conditions, but there is a condition for that. There is a condition to do with lighting and the fact, as Rebecca said, that it's to be censored and that it does go off at 9 o'clock. It doesn't come on any later than that, and it's only on if people are there. That's all conditioned. We don't have a landscaping condition as such because obviously we own the whole site, and obviously there are other sections within the council that look after the woodland. I know you've mentioned you feel that perhaps it needs to have some work done on that, but that's a discussion to have with that department and section that deal with the maintenance of the woodland and the grounds and things. Potentially, you could ask for a condition to have a hedge down there. Where that goes in terms of funding, you know, who's going to pay for that? That's another matter. But, you know, generally speaking, if the woodland's there and it's got undergrowth and scrub and things, I don't know that a hedge is going to add to that.
Yes, I would be against putting an acoustic fence there because I think they are ugly brutes. I think along the north side, where there are much more imminent problems for the bowls club, and possibly even when you're playing football, your concentration might be affected. So I think an acoustic fence is appropriate on the north side, and it will benefit the houses. What I'm much more interested in is to, and again, I'm not clear from what our officer has said, how far the acoustic effects were traced on the southwestern side. I have the impression that the major problem was thought to be the other 3 sides, and St Stephen's has been somewhat neglected in this argument. Now, it seems to me a hedge is perfectly compatible with woodland, is ecologically very friendly, and does absorb noise. And I believe that there are grants available for putting hedges in. So I would encourage that, as I realize this is our application. So in a sense, if we apply a condition to it there, we have some honour bound, and I look at Ben, to deliver. So it seems to me that we should go some way to try to alleviate the concerns on the southwestern side in the same way that we're already alleviating from the side.
On that note, Councillor Barnes, I'll just address the officer. Could the area on those other 2 sides of the skate track, which seems to be causing the issue in terms of noise, of clicking, potential clicking, travelling, be bunded? I mean, they're going to be taking a lot of soil out of there, and sure, it might be easy just to bund those, which you can have a 1.5 metre bund, and it looks quite nice. You're not making an ugly acoustic fence. What are your considerations on that?
I don't know how that fits with the actual scheme that's there. I mean, obviously you've got the other BMX track that runs down there as well. So we're not talking about the skate. The skate track is right adjacent to the woodland. You've got the BMX tracks between the skate track and the woodland. So there wouldn't be scope to put anything round the edge of the skate track.
So what can we do to ensure that what noise is said is going to be made, no more noise is made than that?
The right design of the BMX track at that point, Chairman, might actually throw the noise up in the air. Noise is a very funny thing. I have stood within a mile of Brands Hatch and heard quite clearly. So I think it is problematic, but we could use the BMX track to advantage. What I'm more concerned with is reinforcing that if we can with a hedge.
I'll just go Councillor Tempe first, I think, because she's got an addition to put in there. And then,
Yeah, thank you, Chair. For me, this application is about balance, really, about looking at the concerns of residents and looking at the needs of the community. I'd just like to ask about, we did use very, very competent acoustic people to look at noise, did we not?
Yes.
Yeah. And those people are well qualified in their field?
Yes, I mean, I actually met in the meeting yesterday. I actually spoke to one of the gentlemen that's been involved all the way along in all the modelling and everything. I mean, they're very used to designing these all across the country, and it's their proposals that have come forward. As say, Sport England have been involved as a consultee. They're used to dealing with these sorts of things as well, and obviously they're the ones that a lot of the funding's coming from. So they have looked at all these issues as well. I mean, they are well aware. The only thing I would suggest I would suggest is perhaps a monitoring condition that would allow us to revisit this if issues actually appear later on. If it's going to be approved, then perhaps a monitoring condition would be the way to go, that would allow us to review it once it's up and running, and you know then exactly what's going on and whether there are any issues. And if there are issues, then we can look at further mitigation at that point.
Councillor Ganley.
With regard to the idea of a hedge mitigating the sound, I think it's unlikely. I went into this with an acoustics engineer who happened to be dealing with a planning application in Settlescombe, as it happens, some years ago, and asked him whether I was talking about not a close knit hedge, but some other foliage. And he said, he was quite adamant. He said, noise will go around through anything other than a solid brick wall, basically, or an acoustic fence. But the trees do not diminish the sound going through it. I think a hedge is unlikely to diminish the sound much.
Councillor Mary Barnes and then Councillor Croucher.
Thank you. As long as we've finished talking about the acoustic qualities of it, I'd now like to talk about the rubbish. I wonder whether we could have a condition that says that on major events that the organisers will clear the site, because we certainly don't want to land anybody employed by our authority picking up after a lot of people have been using it.
It's a management thing, but how would we deal with that? How do we deal with it through the planning?
I mean, I don't think that's an appropriate. I don't think a condition for that would meet the tests that the 5 tests that we have to use in planning. That would be a management issue for the amenities department to deal with on their licence agreements and things. I think you
could raise that through any other committee as appointed, and I'm sure it would be supported.
I'm happy to do that, thank you, Chairman. I just don't want any extra expense to fall on the authority.
I suspect everyone is in agreement with that. Councillor Croucher.
Thank you very much. I've already asked for bins with lids on to be put there.
Yes.
We've on this council, we've had a long history
of difficulties with facilities, sports facilities. I think of Ticehurst and the Muga there, and I mean, such a lot of effort and energy go to assuaging neighbours. Bodiam and the lights they didn't follow, and enforcement issues go on. So I really welcome Sarah Shepherd's suggestion that we have a monitoring condition. I did think when I read the report that this was premature, particularly 644 about the condition giving full details, but that's now been removed. Yeah. So it's no longer premature in my mind, and I would like to move approval with the extra condition of monitoring.
All right, thank you very much. I still have Councillor Meir wishing to speak, so we'll take that proposal and wait for a second.
Yes, and Chairman, I was coming back to the sound issue, and I would very much support the idea of a monitoring condition. I think from our experience of the Parents Get Lost case at Sedlescombe, application at Sedlescombe, I think it emerged there is such a thing as a green acoustic fence, but that is actually a fence which is greened up with vegetation. And I very much doubt whether a hedge would be beneficial. We have to listen to what our own experts have said. Paragraph 6.5.2 deals with the Environmental Health Department having no objection, subject to conditions. And they don't really, the report at least doesn't specifically refer to the sound issues to the southwest. And it might be that the Environmental Health's own, the actual report, which I admit I've not fully read, does deal with that, and it may be that Sarah Shepherd can help us there.
So I've not seen anything on that. That's not an issue that's been raised. Obviously, that will have been considered in the modelling of the scheme and monitoring that's been done, but nothing has come out of any of the details that raise an issue for that area.
I would, though, I think, strongly support Councillor Proshak in asking for monitoring condition. It does just seem as a matter of, don't like to rely on common sense because this is science, but the distance and the lie of the land would rather indicate that noise from the skateboard park is more likely to go to the southwest than to the northeast. And yes, I think we could proceed with this and let the project go ahead, and at the same time protect the interests of those neighbours to that southwest side. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I can't help but agree with that. It would seem that in the centre has acoustic protection on one side, but not the other two, where noise must travel in all those directions. So I think noise monitoring is really critical for this. There is a proposer for this. Did anyone want to second that? Councillor Ganley, just hand up first. Thank you very much, Councillor Errington. So we have the recommendation with the addition, with the deletion of condition. Oh, my apologies, Councillor Carroll, you've been so quiet. Would you like to speak before we complete this?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's been wonderful listening to everyone today and heard different things from different people. And I take on all the things, but over the years, the BMX especially started off in '84, and it done very well for itself. Then it fell asleep in our area, Sidley, the area, the banks and the building site has left us, which they did in most high streets, and it was going down Sidley, and the youngsters had nothing to do, and there was a police officer called Steve Croft, and when I managed to win the seat, we got together and got the BMX going again. And Sidley was of the antisocial stuff because the kids were out all night long. And once we got the BMX going, we went right down. And it was because they were going home and going to bed of a night. And we've got to continue with this for the youngsters. We've got to give them something to do. And this is the ideal thing to set something in life where you get a good foundation. And this is part of it. and the sports, they'll be together forever in their lives. And with the man that got the Olympic medal in Peckham, which the lady comes from Peckham, South London, over there, what she was saying. And the man that was the trainer, what he said on the television in the morning was, we want our children behind bars, not behind bars. And I think it's a great way to go forward. And we've got to give the kids the chance, because we've let them down lately, and we've got to get them going. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carroll. Again, apologies. You were very patient listening to everyone else in that. So we have a proposer and a seconder, and the proposal is to remove condition 14, but to add an appropriate noise monitoring condition, which are we happy to delegate that to the officers to work through? Yeah, the Councillor Eric.
Can I just ask, if we're monitoring something, what's the benchmark? The benchmark we must start monitoring now, presumably. Is that part of it? Because they appreciate that it's in existence now and there is some noise. We have records of what the noise is.
Yes, environmental health would normally monitor. They'd have detail. They'd ask the details of the background noise, which, as you say, is nothing, or with the existing facility, and then they'd set a benchmark figure for anything over a certain figure. That's how the monitoring conditions are normally worded.
Councillor Barnes before.
Yes, I'm happy to leave it to Officer Draft, but I think the point which is concerning all of us is we're quite satisfied they've looked very hard at the north of the site, but with the fall of the land, the noise is more likely to affect the southwest. I'd like to see some monitoring with the permission of the residents to establish the benchmark level now in the gardens to the southwest.
Thank you. So the monitoring should be to the southwest as well as to the north.
Yeah.
And Councillor Barnes asked if it could be done in the residential properties. I don't know what would be appropriate for sound monitoring of this kind.
Normally, when they look at noise monitoring, they would look at the boundary of the gardens and things. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Good. Thank you. So we're going to take a vote on that. It's been proposed and seconded. All those in favour of this application? I think that's actually unanimous. Hands down. Anyone against the application? Not a good time to scratch your head, John. And anyone with any abstaining? No, thank you very much. So that has been approved. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Jelena Moon, for coming in. You were listened to, and I know that doesn't address all the issues that you have serious concerns about. I can assure you the members are very aware of all of those concerns, and whilst it's difficult for a planning authority to assess its own planning applications, many of the things which aren't planning matters become taken up by the members in other forums. So, whether it's to do with the the rubbish bins or clearing up afterwards or all sorts of things like that. So everyone is very sensitive about this. And as Councillor Tempe said, it's this real balance that we have to achieve, and it's not one that is easy to achieve, because I think probably everyone in this room has been in your position at some time. Thank you. We're going to move to the next application, which is RR 2021-18474P, which is the Recreation Ground Pavilion, which is associated with that application we just heard. We don't have. We have Rebecca Owen. If anyone wants to ask questions of her, sort of allow people to go. Back. We have Rebecca Owen, if anyone wants to ask questions of her, and we have the ward members should they wish to speak. So did anyone want to ask questions of Rebecca Owen? No? One. So Rebecca, did you want to just come forward and answer a question? Oh, you are too. So I've forgotten about that. You better tell us what it's about. I don't know. I've got all out of order here. My apologies. Sit down there, Rebecca, and we'll come to you in a minute.
Right, your next application is 2021-1874, and this is for all internal alterations to the existing pavilion toilet building that's there to provide a new unisex WC and installation of a ramp for access. Back to the same aerial there. That is the pavilion building up here, nearer Canadia Way there, with the footpath that comes down from the road. This is a view of one side of the pavilion, and as you can see, the path goes round, and there are actually steps up at the end in this area and steps to the front. So unless you go across the grass, there's no level access into the building. And so the proposals, there's the site for you, and the footpath continues off down to the bowls green. That's the existing elevations with all the steps. And as you can see, the proposal includes a ramp to come off from the path in this area here, ramp to serve the changing rooms and things along the back, and the new disabled toilet in the end here. The proposals, as I say, seek to provide wheelchair access with the WC to serve unisex WC. No objections have been received. As reported, the recommendation is for approval with conditions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Barnes.
Yes, it's possibly a slightly perverse question, Chairman, but when I went there, I was expecting to see a pavilion. Instead, I saw a bricked up building. Why are the windows bricked up, and why are we proposing not to unbrick them?
The windows have been bricked up since before my time here, probably, 20 years ago, which I assume was in response to vandalism at the time. And as I said, we are looking with other partners at future possible changes to that building to enhance it and increase its use and value to the community. The provision of a toilet facility, which obviously ties in with the previous application, would be the first step in that.
It worries me slightly. I accept that this happened years ago, but you're putting in facilities which will be more vulnerable to vandalism. And yet, if you have bricked up windows, you're almost inviting vandalism. You're almost saying, we expect this building to be vandalized. I think there's an incompatibility there, which the department needs to address.
Any other questions for Rebecca? No? Well, thank you very much. We have Councillor Carroll and Councillor Coleman again. Did either or both of you wish to speak on this? I'd like Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you say, the place has not had any real money spent on it. I've just been a child, 70 years it's been up there, and I suppose if you had £1 a year spent on it, I think it's much, especially good, so not a lot of money to do catch up and to go in with what we're doing in the area. There is ways that we can have windows. There's monitoring of people using it, but toilets are a difficult thing nowadays. But I think it can be overcome. But there's better people than me doing it. Thank you.
Councillor Coleman.
Thank you. Councillor Carroll's absolutely right. I mean, this is really the start of what hopefully will be a sort of a real sort of look at this building and what it could potentially be. There's so many things that building could be used for, especially now. We're going to have a skate park on the site. We've got the bowls club, the football pitch. You know, the site's being well used, and so the pavilion could be as well. But obviously, currently the main thing you're looking at is about disabled access, and I don't think I need to tell the committee how important disabled access is. It's one of the sort of major things that's concern for me and many others currently in this country is there's a lack of disabled access for a lot of places. And I know in Rotherham, because of the sort of old nature of a lot of our buildings and towns, there's a lot of problems with disabled access. And so every opportunity we have to fix a building that's not equally accessible, I think is only a good thing. So I do hope you can support the officer's recommendation on this.
Thank you very much. I'll start the discussion. Councillor Langlands.
Yeah, just a quick question. Would any of this, surely these facilities, would they not be considered by Sports England as part of the overall project, or in terms of grant funding? Or is that never been considered? I mean,
well, I think the officers probably have, but I think what we're asked to do today is just to consider this application as opposed to what else could happen to the building. I think my expectation personally was something more was happening to the building, but we're just considering exactly what is proposed, which is the disabled access and the toilets. And I think probably it's brought into sharp focus the need that when we all saw the building, that it needed a hell of a lot more than maybe we all expected. So, sadly, we've just got
to move acceptance of the recommendation.
You are moving the. Okay, you're moving. Yes, Councillor Crochet.
I think I will abstain on this one only because I've been chosen from millions to have toilets in my portfolio, and just about to set up a task and finish group on the future of toilets. So I think perhaps I'll abstain on this one.
Accept that. Well, we have a proposer. Does anyone want to second the application? Councillor Madeley is seconding the application. All those in favour of this application? Thank you. Those against the application? None. Those abstaining? We have one. Thank you very much. That's recommended. Good. All right. Looks like you're only going to have one to do. Lucky. I'll keep going. Thank you. We'll move straight on to South Cliff, and I think Claire is handling this one. We don't have anyone speaking for or against, but we do have the local members should they wish to speak. 2021/1108/P59 South Cliff, Bexhill. Wondering for the hand sanitizer.
Not to lay in
No.
So this application is for 59 South Cliff. It's for a replacement dwelling and it also includes works to the rear garden.
Sorry, I haven't had the microphone on, so you might not have heard me. 59 South Cliff, it's an application for a replacement dwelling, which is before you today. It's been called in for your consideration. You went out on site earlier this week. We've got some photo. This is the aerial photograph. So it forms part of a pair of 1950s bungalows. So you'll just see the cursor is over the application site at the moment, and the other pair is just the cursor there. So you'll see that they're slightly lower, this pair, in the street scene than the neighbouring properties. The neighbouring pair, as it were, was granted consent recently in 2019 for a replacement dwelling. Moving on to the next slide, that's a photograph showing the front elevation of the application site. Then we move to the rear of the site. So the site looks out to sea. Cursor just there, you can see, is on the application site. So you'll just make out the white wall of it. And then moving along, this is the view from the promenade that runs along the rear of the site. So that's the site location. So to the north, there is a mix of dwellings, as you will have seen from your site visits, so ranging
1950s, 1960s to 1980s houses, mix of different types and architectural styles. This is the existing site plan showing the dwelling and its relationship. So you'll see that the pair is the same. At the moment, it's slightly set back from building lines of the neighbouring properties. So there's a house with steps going down to the promenade. This is the proposed site layout. So you'll see that the footprint is similar to the existing, but it does move slightly forward in the street scene. Then at the rear, and then we've got, I was just saying, the red shows the footprint of the approved dwelling next door. So it's similar in scale and position to that. And then going back to the application site, as well as the house, there will be a swimming pool and outbuildings. Then, yes, swimming pool, and then that's the summer house. So this is the front elevation of the proposed house. The red you'll see is the existing dwelling. Next door you'll see the existing bungalow as it is, but you also see the blue outline is the approval. So similar scale to both replacement dwellings and similar height to next door as well. It will have a pitched roof. The main roof will be pitched, so not quite as you see it, but it will have 2 front dormer windows, which have been amended following officers' pre-application advice, an integral garage and a veranda. Moving on to the next slide. This is, I think, a useful slide because it shows you the difference in the levels between the front of the site and the rear of the site. But the front, you'll see where the cursor is now, that is sort of the front porch, and we've got the front dormer window. And then due to the change of levels combined with a proposed excavation, the dwelling at the rear goes to 3 stories. So the dotted line shows the current ground level, and then you can see the extent of the excavation in terms of the main house. Then moving to the rear, that is the rear view of the property. There are a number of there's glazing, but it predominantly obviously looks out to sea. There are balconies, but there are privacy screens to prevent harmful overlooking into neighbouring properties, and there is a condition attached in respect of those. This is the existing, on my left-hand side, the existing view from the cliff top, and then that's the proposed with the proposed summer house, and also some new fencing as well to provide security.
Good, thank you very much. Thank you for that. We have Councillor Earl Williams. Yeah. We have Councillor Earl Williams, who I believe called this in, and Councillor Oliver. Did you wish to speak, Councillor Earl Williams? Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I'm speaking to 59 Southcliffe, but it affects also 51 and 55 and 57. I attended the site visit on Tuesday. I called it to the committee as I was very keen for them to see for themselves the large development proposed. This development will have a huge effect on the lives and well-being of the residents of Southcliffe. There has been a precedent set, I'm very well aware. Many of the properties are very old and have been replaced by quite modern, larger developments, which is acceptable in this day and age. Obviously, people are looking for something more attractive. But I am concerned particularly about the development of the Southcliffe itself, because I feel that Okay, sorry. I just feel as we all stood there and looked on the promenade and looked up, it's obviously very concerning that the damage can be done to the cliff face. And I know that we've been assured that it's not going to be a problem. But personally, I just don't feel that enough, we haven't had enough, we need to see more surveys done on it. I feel that the environmental health, for a start, should be really looking at the possible damage that this can cause. And also, there are other, the extraction, and there will be, because there's going to be a swimming pool of concrete, a huge amount of concrete that will have to be dispersed, and I'm worried about that. I just feel that it's got to be subject to proper scrutiny by everybody. And I'm also very worried about the flat roof on the leisure facility, which could obviously be used for entertainment purposes. And we've still been there and seen that before. And I would also just like to say that the residents themselves are going to be subjected to huge inconvenience when this construction is done. I really can't see quite how they're going to transport all the earth and goodness what else has got to be dug out. I particularly want to emphasise that I think it's really important that that site visits happen in these instances, because I don't know how many of you have changed your mind when you've actually gone for a site visit, from sometimes when you look at it on the plan and then you actually see it for yourself. And you just, when we stood on that promenade and looked up at the cliff, I think everybody kind of got the feeling that this is just a huge development. And I think the residents are entitled to have the confidence that we, as their ward councillors, are making every effort to address their concerns and worries by having the committee look at it. So I'm happy that you've all seen it for yourselves, and I leave it now for your discussion.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Oliver, did you want to add any?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I was approached by residents initially when this application was in the public domain, and I contacted the case officer and I raised the concerns of the residents that that came to me on this, and I felt that all the issues that were raised were actually covered off in the officer's report. So it wasn't of a mind to call it in, but I was aware that my colleague had intended to give committee members the benefit of viewing this particular property, which is quite similar to many others that have been undertaken in this part of South Cliff. And I believe it's just the material planning issues that needed to be considered. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anyone like to make a comment? We'll start with Councillor Barnes and Councillor Meir.
Yes, I think it was a very instructive site visit, Chairman. I must say, when you stand in front of the property, although it would not be my favourite design, it does not seem to be wholly out of keeping with some of the other buildings there, and the elevation was acceptable. So I had no problem with the fundamental concept of the building. I think, subject to the necessary survey, I probably have little concern about the swimming bath, although I am a shade worried, but there's plenty of space between the edge of the cliff and the house in which to put it. It's when I got down on the esplanade, I begin to have some doubts about what is happening there. And I rather agree with Councillor Williams. In some ways, the precedent's already been set. But what's happening is effectively we are destroying the cliff face and the vegetation on the cliff face to the detriment of those who are actually walking along the esplanade. We are permanently altering in certain places what is quite naturally not a beautiful cliff, but a very acceptable natural phenomenon. It's becoming almost concrete in places. And that bit of the design does worry me. Whether it's enough to cause me to vote against, I wish in some ways that the first two elements, the elevation of the house and the swimming pool, could be divorced from the thing at the top of the cliff, which is what I find unacceptable. I think too we should actually say that everything below the retaining wall should not be altered and should remain vegetation if we do grant consent, because it seems to me that we need to preserve such of the cliff face that we can. In all cases, I would like to see us go into the local plan as a policy, because it seems to me we've done some extraordinary destructive things there over the years. And it is the impact on the external, on the beach, on the external walkers, that seems to have been ignored. We've indulged the house owners and forgot the externalities.
Thank you. I detected at the meeting that the site visit that there was a concern about that, and I did speak to the case officer, who's a capital officer, and then to Sarah and Claire about this particular thing as to whether we could condition to actually establish whether the development was finishing at that concrete block wall that you saw at the top, and it is. And the suggestion was that we could put a condition in relating to ensuring that the vegetation and the scrub between that and the base was not damaged or changed at all. Do you want to have a comment? Do you want to make a comment on that?
Yes. Yeah. So we've given that some thought, and I think the way forward, or suggested way forward, is that we actually ask for details of the soft and hard landscaping in the rear garden, but also in that condition put that vegetation between what they call the sort of security line and the promenade is retained.
And not damaged during construction, because that is a concern that it's sort of dug out. And, all right, okay. That's useful. I'll have Councillor Mear and then Councillor Madeley here.
Yes, a couple of questions for the officer, please. First of all, obviously, cliff stability has to be taken very seriously. And I see that there's one objector or commentator, an Elfine Killick, has raised the question that there has been a major landslide in the area. Do you know anything about that? No.
I think it's not in the date. It's not considered to be
No, it's not identified in our plan as an area.
Yes, I think I clarified with informally before the meeting that the report says that it's not an area identified as being unstable, but that simply means that it's not in any specific planning policy or any designation of that sort. It doesn't mean that everything is variably stable, whatever you do to it, obviously. And I do appreciate that we have condition 4 as to geotechnical reports before any work starts. But I just wanted to make it clear that I hope the feeling of the councillors would be that when that report is done, that officers take it very seriously. I mean, I'm familiar with land stability issues in my own ward, and I feel for anybody who might unnecessarily have a similar problem, and I understand why the ward member should have raised that. That's the first question. The second one is, again, the ward member raised the issue of the flat roof. Is there likely to be an issue with overlooking if a flat roof were to be used for entertainment, or?
It could be a possible issue, but we could always consider putting on a condition to prohibit its use.
I would propose that we would put on a condition to that.
Councillor Madeley.
Thank you. Yes, Chair. My question would be regarding vegetation. How can we guarantee that somebody's going to leave it as it is? I mean, you've only got to come along with a garden clearer, and then you've got the next stage, which has happened to the upper properties 2 doors down, where there's some huge concrete construction, and I mean, it looks like a huge garage, but it obviously isn't. Somebody suggested it might be a boat shed. So, I mean, what is to stop somebody else coming along and doing something similar? or that this particular property being involved in that way.
Well, yeah.
I mean, vegetation, once it's there, it's like felling a tree which shouldn't be felled. Once it's down, you can't put it back up again.
They would need, just come back to you on that, councillor, they would need planning permission to do any works to excavate and put any buildings on. There would require a separate planning application. No, we couldn't stop them, you know, trimming or weeding or whatever, but the idea of the landscaping condition is to make sure that it stays a green space. And we are also mindful of, I know Claire did look at this, that there is also the special area of protection along the coastline there in terms of vegetation. So as part of the condition, we would look to include that they don't use invasive species and things like that. So we are mindful in drafting the condition that it needs to be kept a vegetated space and not surfaced and, you know, hard landscaped over.
And no non-native species. Because
yeah.
I noticed along there an introduction of interesting grasses in an earlier piece of construction. And I think the message will go back separately in terms of future policy, that we might try and see if a policy protecting that area is possible. I mean, you can never stop anyone doing something really destructive, but you can put in as many conditions and to try and ensure that they don't. Yes, Councillor Prochak.
I'm so glad we've made a strong point about that area that we were looking at. I mean, one of the things about that concrete, it was concrete and brick and goodness knows what at the other side. And it was one of those things like, who gave permission for that? And when we were standing there, I mean, Councillor Barnes mentions the attractiveness for walkers and people, but my goodness, we were standing there and we saw birds and we saw insects and we saw butterflies. And I'm sure this is an application where we could pick up the biodiversity issues more strongly, even with our existing policies.
Good. Do we have anyone else who'd like to speak? Councillor Langlands.
Actually, Councillor Prochak, I think we ought to pick up the coastal erosion issues as well, because I did try and plough through the geological report there, and they did do trial pits, and they were silty, sandy, slightly gravelly clay with the occasional silt pockets, which is a bit alarming actually when you think that there are 3 or 4 properties along there all putting basements in where there were none before. So there's going to be an enormous soil shift there along a particular area, all very close together. So I think that is an issue, and I think we need to be really hot on what is happening there and keep a very, very close eye on it. And also on page 3 of that report, they wrote there is potential for ground stability hazards. And I think that's why they put up together that you need a slope stability analysis. The only thing that I did observe is there is no report, or please tell me if I'm missing it, from the Environment Agency in terms of flood risk assessment and climate change allowances. Should we have done that? I mean, I am concerned about that because I think our attention to climate change is important. And I would have thought we would invite the Environment Agency to make an observation there and see if there were any risks.
Yeah, in terms of the Environment Agency, no, they wouldn't have commented on this. You've got the concrete lower from there, and then the other concrete bits there retaining structures along there, so they wouldn't perceive that there is an erosion issue, particularly to this individual property for this application, and they wouldn't comment on climate change to us as a consultant on an application.
Right, okay. Maybe that's something then we need to look at, obviously, in our local plan. But the other thing I think I would like to see is we do have this slope stability analysis that needs to take place. Can we please include the swimming pool? Because it's 1 metre, 1.2 metres deep. It's going to be a lot deeper than that to actually construct it. And I think we need to be looking, and the weight and everything that goes with that, I think we need to include that in the condition if we may.
We can include some wording in condition to automate that. there.
It's quite a big construction, and I think somehow we need to
Make
be
that
looking at, and
perfectly
it's
clear.
nearer the edge of the cliff.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Are we happy with the suggestions of the board? Want to reiterate those? Comfortable? You know what Vicky felt they were?
Yes, yes. So changing condition 4, so it covers all the development, including the swimming pool and the summer house. Adding a condition in about landscaping, requiring details of soft and hard landscaping of the rear garden, including the retention of the vegetation between the fence and the promenade, and obviously not to have invasive species, and also include a condition prohibiting the use of the flat roof of the summer house for an amenity area.
Would anyone like to propose the recommendation based on those conditions? Someone? Anyone? Okay, we have a proposer, Councillor Project. We have somebody seconding it, Councillor Stevens. All those in favour of that? Okay. Got it. All those against? That two? Yeah. And those abstaining? Sorry, you're against? 3 against. And those abstaining is 1. Does that add up? Good. All right, thank you very much. I'm going to have a little break so you can do the last bit, because otherwise I'm going to run over. Is that okay? So we're going to have just a 10-minute break, at which point Councillor Prochak will take over for the last couple of items. So we'll come back at, what do you have on your computer there? 11:25. And if we can hold the recording now, thank you very much.
To Phil here. Yes. Okay, RR 2021-492P, Fairlight, Gorsecliff, and I'll ask the officer to present. Thank you. Yeah.
Before you call, we are required to record the reason for calling you in.
Yes. Yes, sorry. Thank you for reminding me, and also for reminding me of declarations.
I redeclare.
So Councillor Mears is declaring a personal prejudicial interest because he knows the objector is a personal friend of the objector. The reason I called it in was on the behalf of Councillor Bird and Councillor Mears, because both of them declared interest and the parish council were vehemently against it. So the reason is to give it a fair crack at the whip, as it were. So that's the reason. Well, I can put it more elegantly. For planning reasons. That we actually, the committee looked at it. It's a retrospective application, and it's it doesn't follow. Well, you read the report. It doesn't follow the actual planning commission. Okay. Could I just also mention before we start, before the officers start, is that we requested that Councillor Mears help us find the site. If you remember, we got a bit lost at some point because we had no officers with us. So just to explain why Councillor Mears was there, because he was helping us find out where we were and where to go. And also Councillor Norton got lost.
Well, I was helping Councillor Mears get there early in the car and it didn't work out.
So actually, Councillor Norton actually has said he won't vote because he didn't actually see the site. Okay.
Just to prejudicial interest, surely you should still be in the room.
Well, can I just explain that as well? Our rules are that if a member of the public is speaking, a councillor should have the same rights as the member of the public. So the right is that Councillor Mears can stay in the room, he can actually speak, he can't ask questions, and he certainly has to leave after that. So it's on the same conditions as the member of the public. If there was no member of the public, he'd just have to leave. Does that help? Good. Thank you.
Claire, great, thank you. Thank you. So there's been a bit of an introduction to this. So this is an application which seeks to vary condition 2 and 4 attached to planning approval for a roof extensions in Fairlight. So the site, you've been out and seen the site, I believe, and the site is actually located a bit more towards the cliff, out of sync, if you like, with the other properties. So there is the cursor. So in March 2017, planning approval was given for a loft conversion to change the second floor into habitable accommodation by the insertion of dormer windows and dormer windows to the front and back, and then windows in both elevations, the east and west elevations. There were a number of conditions attached to that planning approval, but the conditions we're looking at today are condition 2, which is our usual condition requiring the development to be carried out with the approved plan. So that's the approved plan there of the side elevation, and condition 4 attached to the approval, which required the windows on the eastern elevation to be obscured glazed. So it's the eastern elevation. So that is the proposed window now on the side elevation. As you'll see, it's slightly larger than the rectangular window that was approved, and it's also got a pediment, if you like, a triangle above it. This is the question that's been constructed on site. Sorry, Sarah, would you mind? Sorry. Okay. Yes, if you could go back one, please. So the other side window as well. So that's the approved side window. And we can go on to the next one, and similarly, slightly different size with the pediment. I call it a pediment. It's the triangle. Go on to the next slide, please. Then we've got the approved rear elevation with windows in the dormer with obscure glazing. And then the proposal for you today, has slightly different shaped windows there. And instead of having them all obscured, the larger one will be clear. Move on to the next slide. So that is the window as it has been built on site. As you're seeing from the report, the case officer has been out on site and has taken pictures standing in the roof conversion. Work still underway, but then you'll see the view there looking out eastwards. Yes. East, so that's the one that should be obscure glazed. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And then if we move on, this is the window on the western elevation, and the prints that this wasn't subject to the condition requiring obscure glazing, but it has got a slightly, as I say, different shape and size. And that's the view looking westwards.
We do have. Sorry, you can.
Yes, I have.
Yes, 2. Thank you. Thank you. So we do have two speakers, an objector and the applicant. Mr. Safin is the objector against the application. Tell us when you're ready, Mr. Safin, and we'll. And thank you for patiently waiting all through this morning.
Not at all. Good morning, councillors. My name is Jim Safin, and I'm speaking on behalf of my partner, Mr. Peter Harwood, who also abides at the Lookout adjacent to Gorse Cliff. We've lived here for 24 years and have always enjoyed sitting in the garden with that beautiful view and sunbathing. We never objected to the initial planning application, as the window was smaller and the glass was supposed to be obscured. However, when we started seeing the redevelopment of the property, when the retrospective application was submitted, we could see that the window is growing in size. And in fact, I've heard that it is 40% larger than it was originally. And it also has no obscure glass. The original planning consent of Gorse Cliff very definitely stated that the eastern facing window should be of a certain size, which does overlook our summer house, decking and garden area, and should be obscured to prevent lack of privacy. This is most definitely, in my opinion, an invasion of our privacy. This property has been extended mainly for the views, and I quite agree with that because it's a beautiful spot on the cliff top. And this by no means is their only view, as they have a balcony facing the sea, views of the valley towards Pett. It's virtually 360 degrees. And we feel this is a cynical retrospective planning application. And we feel that the owner should be made to put it back to exactly to the original plans, if not by at least adhering to the installation of obscure glass. I do think site visits are important. And in fact, I was aware that you did come up to the property last Tuesday. And because you couldn't grant access to Gorse Cliff property, it was decided to come round and see our garden to see for themselves. But unfortunately, we were walking the dogs and we didn't get the message until you were on the way back to Bexhill. So I apologise for that. And that's all I really wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And don't apologise. We should be apologising because we're in an interim position where we don't have officers to actually accompany us on site visits. So it's up for us to apologise to you.
Thank you very much.
But thank you. Any questions? Yes.
Could I just ask, could we see the view from the eastbound, the eastward looking window again, please?
I don't know if this is allowed. I did ask your colleague this morning, but I did print some pictures off. But am I allowed to distribute them? Okay. Fair enough.
Perhaps we can pick when I get you. Yes. Any other questions? Mr. Safin? Thank you very much then.
Thank you.
We can talk about that when we get to the discussion with officers. And Mr. Hamidi.
Chairman, it might be helpful if we're going to look at that picture. Is that the summer house that is the building in sight or what?
I think we should leave that till we get to the officers and give Mr. Hamidi his chance to speak.
If the officer can tell us, that's helpful.
Mr. Hamidi. And apologies to you too, and thank you for being so patient.
Members, allow me to begin by thanking Rother Council for facilitating my attendance in this meeting. My thanks also go to the members of the committee for considering this case and listening to what I have to say. In the bundle of the case, you will find our proposal and a short statement in support of this application. You also find objections by 14 households in Fairlight, which we believe is a concerted campaign by basically a couple of objectors, which has enveloped the village. Half this number object to the position of the house and to the approved extension, with words like ugly, blot on the village, and other personal taste assertions. Some of it reads like hate mail. To save time, I will address the objections of the Fairlight Parish Council, which summarizes all the objections. Referring to condition 2, the Parish Council states that the increased size of the window on the west allows greater overlooking of gardens of other properties in Channel Way. We disagree. This window was approved with clear glass, and the increase in size is actually below the position of the approved window and does not materially change the extent of the views of the neighboring properties as would have been available in the original design. We disagree with the suggestion that this window would be to the detriment of the amenity of the residents next door and others, over and above the views already available to Gorse Cliff from the other approved clear glass window on that side, from the approved balcony, from the balcony on the first floor, and from the clear windows of bedrooms on the first floor. The Parish Council then refers to condition 4 and the neighboring property on the northeast, the lookout. Directly overlooks the garden area, summer house, garden room, and general entertaining space of the adjacent house. It further claims that the attached photograph demonstrates this. The window approved with obscurity and as an opening window, and as such, when open, would have provided the same views, if any, of the lookout as the proposed clear glazing. Views which are in any case available from the approved balcony and clear window on the first floor. Photographs taken by the enforcement officer, Mr. Dan Bevan, and the planning officer, Mr. Oliver Hurst, would show that these views are almost exclusively those of the cliff and the sea and do not impinge on the privacy and amenity of the lookout.
Mr. Hamidi, you have less than a minute left.
Thank you. The photograph attached by the Parish Council is taken from inside the garden of the lookout and is coming to the panel to have a look at. The Parish Council chooses to enumerate what is to be understood as different areas within this property, which are all claimed as overlooked. The garden area, summer house, garden room, and entertainment space of the adjacent house. We have no views or knowledge of the garden room or the entertainment space. The summer house is some 20 meters away from this window, and only a part of its roof and part of a solid wall is visible from the window in question.
Mr. Hamidi, we're going to have to stop you. Had you very much more to say?
I need another 40 seconds, if I may.
Make that 10.
We also object to the wording of adjacent house. The house is by no means adjacent to the Gorse Cliff, being some 50 meters away and separated by established trees and gardens. Only a small part of the roof of the house is visible from the window.
Thank you, Mr. Hamedi. I think we've really got a clear picture from what you've said. Just a quick comment on what you said initially. We on the planning committee are very well used to people's passions running high, and the way they describe things can be poetic. So I don't think there's any reason to suggest that there's anything else but feelings about that. Just that's what I wanted to say. Thank you very much. Any questions? Councillor Gamley.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Hamidi, thank you for your presentation. The use of clear glass in place of approved obscure glass on the eastern elevation. I don't have a problem with the change in shape of the glazed panels or an increase in size of the glazed panel, an increase, etc. But I have a question regarding the use of clear glass, or rather, clear glass in place of approved obscure glass. And that is, why, when obscure glass was approved, you installed clear glass?
Well, we have tried to explain that in our planning permission and in defense of it. It was in consultation with all the team involved, which is an architect, an engineer, and a very experienced contractor. And they looked at the site, and they looked at the view, and there virtually was no disturbance of overlooking the other property. The decision was made to actually carry on because the contractor had to go. We were faced with COVID, with lots of delays and expenses, and they had to build this, and we had every intention of applying to explain the situation. But the enforcement officer and the planning officer who came, they could see it clearly that we had we had no reason to do this mischievously, because anybody can see that any views of question of privacy is non-existent or minimal.
Yeah, well, we're going to see the picture again. That was my impression of that picture.
I hope there would be clearer pictures. Yeah, that one you saw wasn't that clear.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Gamley. Any other questions? Yes, Councillor Maidley.
Thank you. I'm not sure actually whether this is a question for Mr. Hamidi or for officers, but Mr. Hamidi mentioned that the windows that we're actually talking about, he said if they had openings or could be opened, then the same effect. I wasn't aware in the photographs that I saw that there were any catches or any opening devices on those particular windows. Can that be clarified, please?
I think again that's part of the discussion, isn't it?
It may, yes. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Errington.
My question again, maybe to Sarah, is that are these rooms bedrooms or living space?
Right. Any specific questions?
Sorry about that. It's living areas rather than, yes.
Mr. Hamidi, could you just tell me, can you stand up beside those windows? Like, it's very difficult to see from the picture, or do you have to stand back? What I'm saying is, can you be right up against the window, full height, and stand there? Or is the roof line such that you need to stand back?
No, you can stand up next to it, but you can stand up next.
Thank you.
We don't plan to, but that's the
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. So thank you very much, Mr. Hamidi. You could switch your microphone off for us.
Sure.
Thank you. I think, Councillor Langland, your question is so pertinent because we can see the views from the picture the officer's shown us, but we can't see down. So perhaps the officers can help us with that.
Chair, I don't know at what point I should say what little I have to say and leave the room.
I think it's a good point now because the officers are trying to find the screen again.
I'll be very brief. I'm aware I'm walking on eggs here. Obviously, the issue is the balance of amenity between these two properties, whether it's really necessary to protect the privacy of the lookout, whether it's really necessary for the amenity of the newly extended building, Gorsecliff. Perhaps councillors, in considering that, might bear in mind whether the room which we're seeing there on the screen now, whether there are other windows in it which provide proper natural light and outlooks and views, or whether that is essential to the use of that particular part of the house, which we gather as a living room. My very last point is that Mr. Hamidi has said that there are a lot of comments about the height of the roof, bulk of the building and so on. And Mr. Hamidi is quite right that those comments are misplaced. All that is in accordance with the approved plans. It is perhaps more visible than people were thinking when the permission was given, but that's just a fact of life. It is a prominent building in the village, but it is built, so far as the height is concerned, entirely in accordance with the planning conditions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. It doesn't seem as though we have pictures of actually looking down.
No.
Chairman, if I may, do officers know if looking down from there, standing beside the window looking down, what can be seen?
I think maybe it'd be useful if we go back to the site. Obviously, the site plan also shows the relationship with the neighbouring properties.
If we can go back to that photograph, which clearly the enforcement officer has gone to the angle which should show a building. I can't see a building there. Am I wrong?
This OS is probably not as up to date as the OS that you've got before you on the committee report. But you'll see there, obviously, the eastern elevation, and then it's sort of slightly tilted, if you like, and I believe the outbuilding is just, yes, the cursor there. No, it's probably that, I'm afraid.
Councillor Barnes, if you're speaking, could you put your microphone on?
Yes. Sorry, the point.
Yeah.
I was expecting to see the building that's on the map. I can't see it. And
yeah,
I'm puzzled.
You might glimpse it there.
Can I make a suggestion? And I don't know if the committee would support this. It seems to me that we wanted a site visit for a purpose, and we actually haven't fulfilled the purpose of the site visit. And my suggestion is maybe we could defer this one for a proper site visit where we can actually go up into that room and see for ourselves, because at the moment we're relying on an officer's description on plans which, as you know, don't always show what we can see if we're on site. If anybody thinks that's a good idea, then let's go along those lines. Councillor Langley.
It would appear that is that a Velux at the side there, which I presume, does that open and is that clear?
Yes.
The ones in the north and south, and there is a,
But
there's
that
a
probably
terrace
impacts
and,
more on that garden than the other.
It is very, very difficult. I think I would agree with Councillor Proshak that I don't have a clear picture here of
Defer?
yeah.
So are you moving that, Councillor?
Yes, I will move
Have we got a
that.
seconder for that?
What?
Is that, it meet with everybody's approval?
Yeah.
Hands up. Thank you. And I'm sure the applicant will be happy for us to, once you know we're coming and when we're coming, you can take care of your son appropriately. Thank you. Sorry, I'm sorry, we can't have any more interaction with you at this stage. Thank you. Right, we move on then. Okay, Jim?
Chairman, we're taking this at the next meeting, are we?
I assume so.
I think that depends on when officers can do that.
Okay. There's more, Councillor Ganley.
I'm just going to get Councillor Meir back in the room.
Yeah. So we move on to appeals on page 53. It's for reporting the appeals. Are any questions or anything anybody wants to raise? No?
Chairman, I was slightly surprised to see Ashford on the list. I thought the applicant indicated he was going to withdraw.
Sorry, which one?
It's 2020-1798.
I don't think it should be on the list.
It's we might not have had notification from PINS yet that it's been withdrawn.
All right.
I mean, they're very, 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 very behind at PINS. So.
Okay, no other comments, no other questions. We can move on. It's for noting, so we don't need to vote on it. And it's just the date and time for future site inspections. So we rely on our officers to make sure that we can actually know where we're going. We have an officer in attendance. We can get into the house.
If we've got somebody available, yeah.
We'll find somebody.
But yeah.
Okay, so the date and time for future site inspections, 12th of October at 9 a.m. I like the later time, I have to say. And that concludes the meeting at... wait a minute, is this pertinent? Because we've still got the cameras going. So this marks the end of... Yeah. 12th of October. So we can now switch the cameras off.